Military personnel, what's the best, weirdest, funniest punishment you've seen handed down by a superior? Story 1. I was in a gender-mixed company in basic. The third floor of the barracks were split with females on one half and males on the other. Males were not allowed in the female half, and vice versa. My platoon was out back practicing throwing grenade bodies, and a window on the female side of the third floor opened, and a male snuck out of the window onto the ledge. It was immediately obvious to everyone, including our drill sergeant, that he had been in there messing around with a female, and a drill sergeant must have come down the hall, forcing him to get out onto the ledge, so he wouldn't get caught. Our drill sergeant looked at the guy for a minute, and then yelled really sarcastically, "Don't do it, Private, you have lots to live for!" Then they put him on seppuku watch and made him hand over his belts and ties and shoelaces and everything that he could hang himself with, and made him drag his newly bare mattress out into the hallway next to the fire guard desk and sleep out there every night until we graduated 4 weeks later. And they made his battle buddy sleep on the floor next to him for the first week. I know they probably take this sort of thing super seriously, but coming from a drill sergeant who usually chews people out, I would have expected something more like, do a flip. Story 2. USMC here. In our unit, we had one guy that would constantly hum songs. Well, one day, our CO had enough of his behavior, so he tells him to report to his locker. So he goes to his locker and stands in front of it. CO tells him to get inside the locker. When he does, he shuts and locks the door with him inside. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a quarter and pushes it through the vent holes and tells the guy to start singing, and tells him that whenever someone puts a quarter in this slot, he was to sing another song. This went on for 6 hours. The guy made around $15 in quarters, and we were all in pain from laughing at him. Needless to say, he acquired the name Jukebox and never hummed again. That is quite impressive. I'm sure that even if I tried my darndest, I could not come up with 6 hours of material to keep it going. You can only sing Party in the USA so many times, right? Story 3. My brother told me that when he was in basic, a drill sergeant yelled at this guy to beat his face, meaning to do push-ups. Said guy had no clue it meant that and promptly punched himself in the face really hard and fell to the ground. The drill sergeant had to walk that one off, and my brother said you could hear him laughing hysterically as he walked behind a building. Not totally relevant, but I figured I'd share. That guy surely had an older brother growing up. Stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. Story 4. One of my friends from my first base and I were swapping basic stories, and I think he had the scariest. On the first day of third week, they hadn't performed up to standards, and the MTI told them he'd been staying late that night to try to fix them. The MTI calls his wife to let her know he'd missed dinner and would be home late, and she blew the frick up. She was screaming at the MTI about how he's just using his job as an excuse, how he doesn't even care about her, and while all this is going on, the MTI is just pleading with her. She hangs up on him, and the MTI looks at the flight with this expression of cold hate, and says he was going to his office for a minute to think of an appropriate way to punish the flight for their stuff. Basic training is a lot of talk. The MTIs can PT you until your body gives out and scream at you, but they can't actually hurt you. In that moment, though, as they waited for the MTI to come back, they weren't so sure that would be the case. He was going to make them pay, and my friend said that was the only time in basic he felt true fear. It turns out it was all an act. The MTI had that genuinely happen during a previous flight, and it had terrified them into compliance so well, he got his wife to pull it off every flight afterwards. Story 5. A fellow lance corporal at the time let out a sneeze. Huge snot rocket pops out and lands on his cheek. I mean, just one beast of the thing. My sergeant, standing in front of him, talking to him while this happened, let out a "What the frick, you nasty witch, put it back," and right back up it went. Funniest stuff I've seen. Story 6. U.S. Air Force here. I'm sure there are better ones than this, repressed in my memory somewhere, but this one stands out as the funniest. In basic, if you got pictures in the mail, the TI had to look through them to make sure they weren't pornographic or whatever. So people are handing him pictures to look through, and he's looking through them, feet up on the desk, Ray-Ban wraparounds up on his forehead, chillin'. And in one of them, it's the trainee in question with friends, throwing up West Side. TI asks, "West Side?" Trainee says, "Yes, sir." TI replies, "On your face." Trainee starts doing push-ups. TI looks through the pictures a little more, looks down at the trainee and says, "East Side, mofo." I can only hope that by the end of their time together, they both come face to face, snapping their fingers real low like, and then they have a nice dance-off. Story 7. I have an opposite story where we punished our superior. When I was in South Korea in the mid-2000s, we had an absolutely chunt of a lieutenant. He walked around like his poop didn't stink. Thought he knew everything there was to know, pretty much like most lieutenants. One weekend, a bunch of us were walking back from the PX, loaded up with beers and snacks for the weekend. Like, each of us had at least a case of beer and a few bags each. Hands were totally full. Our lieutenant walks past us, and we nodded and said, "Sir," instead of saluting. Most officers won't make you put down all your stuff just to salute, at least the good ones. This guy flips out about us not saluting and proceeds to physically train the frick out of us for about 30 minutes. After that, it was on. Anytime we saw this guy, we would grab everyone we could, form a line with about 20 feet distance between each person, and walk towards him. He would have to salute every single one of us. It didn't matter where he was, when we saw him, we had about 20 soldiers beelining towards him just to salute. The best was when he was on his cell phone, because he would have to put it down every 10 seconds just to salute all of us. This went on for about 3 weeks, him saluting everyone all the time, every single day. He finally got tired of it and asked us not to salute him anymore. I knew from the beginning of the story when they said that he thought his dookie didn't stink that he would one day learn that roses really smell like poo-poo. Story 8. Got caught on basic with my iPod, and I ran around the camp for near 2 hours with my iPod over my head shouting, "I'm a stupid frick for bringing my iPad in the field," as the enemy was attacking our camp. I then proceeded to put my iPod on a plastic bag, then taped it onto my helmet, and from there on I responded to Private iPod. When my instructor shouted play, I had to sing, skip, I had to switch songs, etc. It lasted 2 weeks, even during the night when I had 1 or 2 hours of sleep. Story 9. USMC boot. One kid on Firewatch failed to notice the drill instructor coming on deck, which means you immediately salute and report your post. So the DI ran up to the rifle rack, smacked it, and yelled, "Bam! You're dead!" He tried to respond, but was cut off by the DI. "You're a ghost now, you can't talk! Go act like a ghost!" Then the kid had to wander around the squad bay for the rest of his 2-hour Firewatch, acting like a ghost, and he took that responsibility with a stride. Plenty of ridiculous, "Ooh, I'm a ghost" noises, and messing with people's racks. We were all laughing our butts off for the next hour, till our senior got ticked off. "Ooh, I'm not a shopping list, I'm a ghost." Story 10. On the final FTX of a basic I was teaching a few years ago, one of the less brilliant troops decided to take his laptop, which he'd smuggled into the field for this exact purpose, with him into a Blue Rocket porta-potty so he could jerk off to an obnoxiously loud Asian corn. The idiot left his C9 on the wrong side of the door, though, and forgot that it was there when he came out. One of my Jack's Jr. NCOs found it and brought it back to the CP, and I naturally brought Buddy in to explain himself. The smartest Troopaloop decided it'd be clever to explain to us exactly what he'd been doing. Not that there'd been any doubt, in the hopes that we'd be too embarrassed to do anything about it. I drew up an access list and made him stand watch on the Blue Rocket tactical pooper for the next 8 hours, with explicit instructions not to let anyone in until they signed the visitor's log. We all had fun watching the brigade sergeant major tell him to "get the F out of my way before I poop in your hat." Ooh, desperate times call for desperate measures, I'm sure, but I personally would never want to do anything like that in a porta-potty. Story 11. What are they going to do, bend my dog tags? Take my birthday away? Chuckle, chuckle. Yep, apparently a Navy captain did just that once on purpose by deliberately sailing parallel to the international dateline, then slipping across it right on midnight. Tomorrow suddenly became yesterday, and no birthday for you this year, you chucklehead. Story 12. Marine boot camp. We had a guy that somehow got his watch through the in-dock. They take all your stuff when you first get there. Well, the drill instructors found out that he had it when they saw him wearing it one day, so they put him in the squat bay trash can and put the lid on it. Every time they walked by and kicked it, he'd pop out with his watch and yell, "Sir, the time on deck is 09:45, and then go back into his can like the frickin' Grouch from Sesame Street. It was really, really hard to not laugh at that. Story 13. Guy in basic dropped the biggest turd you've ever seen in the commode. So he shows the drill sergeant, who then makes him suit up in full combat gear, weapon and all, and guard it all night. The whole, "Halt, who goes there?" Pretty amusing. Well, when you've got something that many Kuriks, you definitely have to protect it at all cost. Story 14. During Beast to USAFA, one of my fellow cadets started laughing at one of our flight NCOs whistling that to the left song. Cadre went off on him. "Basic Cadet Snoo, are you laughing?" "Yes, sir." "Why are you laughing? Do you know what happened today?" "No, sir." "Bruce Willis died today. Do you hate Bruce Willis?" "No, sir." "Then why are you laughing at his death?" "No excuse, sir. Today is a day of national tragedy. We need to memorialize his death. Pick up one of those rocks." Does so. "This is now the Bruce Willis Memorial Rock. What should we name it?" "Sir, I do not know." "We are going to name it Bruce. From now until the end of basic, you will carry Bruce with you at all times. If I ask you how Bruce is doing, you will show me Bruce and sound off yippee-ki-yay, sir. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "How's Bruce?" "Yippee-ki-yay, sir." Well, at the risk of joking about this, given the recent news about Bruce Willis and his health, we now have his new Screen Actors Guild name established, Bruce the Rock Willis. Story 15. We were deployed in Iraq, and a guy was peeing in water bottles instead of walking to the bathroom at night. This is a common thing, but this guy wasn't getting rid of the bottles. He'd keep them underneath his cot for some reason. When the first sergeant found this out, he made the guy report to the commander while holding all of his pee bottles in a box in front of him. They tore into this guy while he was holding a box of his own urine. Story 16. Friend of mine was randomly placed in a Spec Ops flight, which is usually a flight full of aspirant combat controllers, parajumpers, etc., but this one wasn't completely full, so they backfilled with some non-Spec Ops folk. Anyhow, people trying to be in Spec Ops jobs have to pass what are essentially the regular PT standards before they can even show up to basic. Pass test. So, by about week 4, push-ups as a punishment wasn't doing anything to anyone. Instead, that training instructor would single out whoever messed up, go to their wall locker, and start unrolling and unfolding their meticulously hand-rolled and wrinkle-free t-shirts and socks and things. Story 17. Officers can't punish soldiers with any punishment that doesn't follow guidelines. That said, they can be ordered some stupid things. My friend got ordered to move a box weighing about 50 pounds from the barracks to the shower every 2 minutes for 2 hours. The officer's reason for it was because he didn't know where to put it and was trying to decide if it should be at the barracks or the shower. In the end, he ended up telling him to load it up in the truck. Anyone familiar with Brian Regan's joke about judges not being allowed to give out cruel or unusual punishments? Cruel, of course, but unusual. Seems some of the sergeants bump up against that line as well. "For your punishment, I want you to, place a slice of bologna upon your face, cut out the eye holes, and, go to the local mall and begin yodeling." "Objection, Your Honor. A bit unusual, don't you think?" "All right, just drop and give me 20. Story 18. In U.S. Army basic training, one soldier lost his canteen and asked the drill sergeant if he had seen it. The drill was angry at this for some reason, and made the private wander around for a few hours asking all kinds of inanimate objects if they had seen his canteen. So things like, "Trucks, have you seen my canteen?" Story 19. In the Marine Corps, when we really messed up, we would go fishing. It is where you squat down like you're sitting in a chair and hold a shovel out in front of you in the air like a fishing pole. Then you just sit there for a long time, and if the shovel would start to droop down, my sergeant would grab the tip of the shovel and start to shake it and make me pretend I was reeling in the big one. One time, me and a buddy got in trouble together, so they made him fish and me flop around on the deck like a fish he had already caught for almost an hour. "Drop on the deck and flop like a fish." Story 20. When someone got caught going the wrong way or cutting in the chow line, OSUT, basic for infantry, the drill sergeants would make them wander about the DFAC at random, repeating, "Beep beep, wrong way." It was totally quiet otherwise, and they seemed like broken robots. Story 21. Another from basic was a private was caught walking to the showers without wearing his clothes, just holding his towel and walking nude. The showers were in the same bay, and it was just males in the bay, but a female drill from another platoon came in and saw him and made him drop and give 50 push-ups while nude. That's hardly a punishment. It's actually easier to do them nude because you've got the kickstand ready. Story 22. Week 1 in Army basic training, we had a soldier ask for an omelet in the chow line, which was not allowed because there was absolutely no time to make custom omelets for every single basic training soldier. The cook started making the omelet when a drill sergeant asked what the heck was going on. The basic training soldier replied, "Go around, drill sergeant, I'm waiting on an omelet." Needless to say, this was the wrong thing to say and do week 1 in basic training. Our platoon motto was henceforth, "Go around, drill sergeant, I'm waiting on an omelet," and the basic training soldier was henceforth named Private Omelet. Story 23. We were required to wear dog tags, but keep them tucked inside our shirts at all time, and some idiot was walking around with his hanging out, and got them spotted by a particularly vindictive training instructor. Vindictive TI told him to start pushing. No, do not put your dog tags away. Every time they touch the ground and ding, you say, "Ding, fries are done." Story 24. A guy I worked with had a habit of falling asleep at his desk. He was a real scumbag. Unfortunately, he was also a one-star general's son. They made him sit at his desk with one of those exercise yoga ball things. The fricker still fell asleep. But he would hit his head on the desk or fall over. He also decided to tell his supervisor he had an appointment, but instead took a nap in his room. They called the cops on him and had him arrested for dereliction of duty. Fun stuff. Story 25. In basic, when going to throw out some trash, left my rifle, which you're not supposed to do. Myself and 2 of my buddies had to hold on to our assault packs in one hand like a shield and long sticks in the other like a spear. Then we had to stack up in a line on a tree and push with our shields for 5 minutes with our spears raised, yelling war cries. Apparently, the Spartan did this full training. And apparently, if I don't have my rifle in a combat situation, I will need to know how to do this.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.